just left school a few months before, and I'd been at a rather posh, fee-paying boarding school in Edinburgh that shall be nameless, but Tony Blair went there as well, long after me. And there I'd risen to the dizzy heights of a prefect, and I'd been in charge of the combined cadet force. And I thought, well, the army will not be much different from school. Boy, was I wrong. Within about 2 hours of arriving at this castle in Stirling, my civilian identity was stripped off me, and that included all my clothes. I was dressed in a suit of very baggy denims, a huge pair of tackety boots, and I was marched off to show where I was going to live, in a huge barn of a barrack room, which in previous existence had been the dining hall of the Scottish kings in Stirling Castle. And there I was, with about 30 other guys, none of whom knew each other. There were about 2 other guys who came from a kind of middle-class background like me. All the rest were from the local area, farm labourers, miners, various guys working in offices and so on, and one poor fellow from London who'd been sent up to join the Argyle so that when he finished and went back to London he could become a member of the London Scottish Territorial Regiment. And for the next wee while, life was just absolutely bizarre. We were marched everywhere. We were marched everywhere by corporals who mainly shouted and swore at us. We were marched to breakfast, which was usually watery scrambled egg and tinned tomatoes. We were marched to the gym. We were marched onto the drill square, where we were drilled and drilled and drilled until we were really fed up with this, because we were to be the demonstration drill platoon at the Edinburgh Festival. That actually never happened because something got in the way, but I'll mention that later. Life was fairly rough, and it was a huge culture shock. Our sergeant was a guy called Dexter Leach, and he was a veteran of the Korean War, where he had been bombed both by the Chinese and by the Americans, as you do. And he was a very rough diamond who soon got the hang of what we were about and discovered that one of our guys, a friend of mine from school, who was in the same platoon, had garaged a car secretly down in Stirling, which he wasn't supposed to do. So Dexter Leach decided that he wouldn't tell on this guy, provided he agreed to take Dexter Leach on illicit assignations with ladies of the street in Stirling. So on one occasion, I went with my friend, and we went with Dexter to take him down to his assignation. That happened about 8 o'clock at night, and we were told to come back for him at about 10:30, which we did, to find him roaring drunk, standing outside this lady's house. So we shoved him into the back of the car, where he alternatively sobbed his heart out and tried to tell me what a wonderful person I was, and on the other hand started singing loud, raucous songs. Well, that was okay. We could have got through that, and we started to drive back up the hill to the castle, until halfway up we were stopped by the police. We thought it was because they'd been following us, and they thought that maybe they'd heard Dexter Leach shrieking and yelling away. And as soon as they stopped by the police and they came round to the driver's window to talk to us, he saw the police and decided he wanted to get at them. He wanted to set about them. So he's trying to crawl over me to get at these policemen. I'm trying to hold my platoon sergeant down, who's my boss, and keep him quiet. And meanwhile, the driver is trying to explain to the policeman why he hadn't noticed that one of his brake lights wasn't working, which was why they stopped us. Anyway, we got back up and life continued, and eventually we were allowed as young recruits to go out into the town. But we had to go out dressed in full uniform, heavy woolen kilt held up by what looked like nappy pins. There were no buckles and anything like that. It more or less was held up against the force of gravity. It was quite scary. And to go out into the town like that, each one of us had to walk through the guard room over a mirror set on the floor. Now you may ask, why would there be a mirror set on the floor? Well, of course, as you may have guessed, the job of the guards sergeant was to check that we weren't wearing anything illegal under our kilt. Not the nicest of things. Anyway, we got through, we went down, and we had a nice time, we came back. That was us as recruits. And eventually we finished and we were passed out, and I was sent off to be trained to be a wee officer. And the rest of my time in the army, as I was learning to grow up, was frankly, with one exception, extremely boring indeed. I had joined a Highland regiment in the hope that I would see the world. In fact, I mainly saw the flatlands of Suffolk because we were posted to Bury St Edmunds. I lived in a First World War transit camp for about 18 months. The one exception was that we were sent over to Egypt when Britain and France decided they would try and reclaim the Suez Canal from the Egyptians who nationalised it. And if any of you have read your history, you'll know that that was a total and utter failure, and we were kicked out. There's another story there, but I'll keep that for after. I came armed forces in the Gulf, which he did for about 3 years. Then he came back and resigned his commission again from the army and decided to become a Catholic priest. And for the last 30 or so years, because we're still in touch, he has been pioneering in the Catholic Church liturgical dance, which is an interesting occupation for a former soldier. So I look upon my career in the army, which was the beginning of my adult life, with a certain degree of mixed feelings. It was very boring. It was very strange. It was a huge culture shock. But I grew up very, very fast. You had to survive. And I met some fascinating people, like a Korean veteran, Dexter Leach, or an army officer turned monk, turned priest, and turned liturgical dancer. Pretty interesting time to begin becoming a grown-up. Thank you very much.